It was one of those evenings you forget while you're still in it, until something happens that brands it into your memory like a scar. We had dinner at her parents' house, something we did maybe once a month, and I had convinced myself I didn't mind it anymore. The long drive across town, the forced smiles, the subtle jabs her father delivered under the guise of humor. I'd learned to tolerate it all for Emma's sake. Or maybe I'd just gotten used to quiet discomfort. Their house was lit up like always, too bright, too clean, the kind of place that felt staged for a magazine spread but never truly lived in. Emma slipped right into the rhythm of the place, kissed her mom's cheek, laughed at her brother's tired jokes, poured herself a glass of wine like she'd never left. I followed behind her, feeling like a cardboard cutout of myself. The reliable husband accessory. Dinner was lemon chicken with rosemary potatoes. I complimented the food. Her mother said, "It's from a new recipe book." Her father grunted something about the economy. Emma didn't look at me once during the meal. Not with the kind of glance that says, "Hey, we're in this together." She just smiled and talked and performed. After the plates were cleared, I stepped outside onto the back deck. I remember the air was cool, and the sky was trying to decide whether to rain. I leaned on the railing, watching the neighbor's dog chase its own tail in the yard next door. Inside, the kitchen lights glowed yellow against the glass. I could hear the low rumble of conversation rise and fall, Emma's voice mixing with the others. Then laughter, sharp and bright. I wasn't eavesdropping. Not really. I was just still enough to hear. One of the voices, her friend Marcy, maybe, giggled, "So, come on, are you even faithful this time around?" That was followed by a beat of silence. And then Emma's unmistakable chuckle. Carefree, confident. "You know me. I'm not the kind to hold on to the past." That was all she said. Nothing more. No clarification. No denial. Should have meant nothing. A throwaway comment. Maybe an inside joke. But it wasn't. Not to me. I didn't storm back inside. I didn't confront her. I didn't even flinch. I just turned, opened the sliding door, and walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Emma was pouring more wine. She smiled at me, touched my arm as I passed. I smiled back. My hands didn't shake. My breath stayed steady. But something else shifted inside me. Something deep. Something permanent. That night, after we got home, she took a long shower. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the closed door, listening to the water run. I thought about the years we'd spent together, how carefully I'd built the foundation of our marriage. I wasn't perfect, but I had been constant, loyal, present. When she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, humming some melody, I looked up. She smiled again, warm, effortless. The same smile she gave to her coworkers, her parents, the barista she tipped extra on Sundays. A smile so practiced it no longer belonged to me. I pulled the covers back and climbed into bed. She joined me a few minutes later, scrolling through her phone with the screen dimmed low. I turned away and stared at the wall until she turned off the light. In the darkness, I replayed her words over and over. Not the joke, not the friend's question, just her answer. "You know me. I'm not the kind to hold on to the past." What did that even mean? Was I the past now? Was she laughing off a version of herself that included me? Or was she admitting something she didn't think I could hear? She had been married before, that much I knew. A man named Lucas, from her college days. Their divorce was quick and quiet, at least from what I'd heard. Emma rarely brought him up, except to say it had been a phase. I remember asking about it when we first started dating. She told me he was emotionally distant, that he never really saw her, that he made her feel like a ghost in her own home. I believed her. I had wanted to believe her. That's the thing about love, it builds trust like muscle memory. You believe not because of proof, but because believing feels better than doubting. But now I wasn't so sure. It wasn't just that one line. It was the way her body language had changed in the past few months. The way she dressed with more intention. Not for me, but for someone. The way her perfume lingered longer than before, as if she wanted someone else to follow the scent. She used to share everything with me. Little thoughts, random ideas, half-baked dreams. Now, her days were recited like press releases. Work was fine. Meetings. I'll probably be late tomorrow. Don't wait up. That sort of thing. And her phone. Always locked. Always flipped face down. I didn't go through it, I wasn't that kind of husband. But I noticed things. The sudden smiles while texting. The vague explanations. The new passwords. I didn't tell anyone about what I heard that night. Not even my best friend, Caleb, who would have picked it apart like a crime scene. I didn't write it down. I didn't scream into a pillow. I just started watching. I watched how she moved around the house. I watched how she responded to me. Absent-minded kisses, distracted nods. I watched how her face lit up when she got a message, and how quickly it faded when she saw I was watching. I started keeping a mental ledger. Not of proof, just of moments. Things that didn't quite fit. Like how she suddenly had late meetings twice a week, even though I knew her department didn't operate after 5. Or how she came back from the gym freshly showered, but her towel and clothes never seemed to be wet. I kept telling myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining things, that maybe I was just feeling insecure because I'd gained a few pounds, or because work had been slow, or because routine was wearing on us both. But something inside me had shifted that night on the back deck. And once that shift begins, it's almost impossible to stop. It's like trying to unhear a confession whispered in your sleep. You can pretend it didn't happen, but it stains everything after. That was the night I realized something wasn't right. Not with her. With us. The shift wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with accusations or tears. Crept in like fog under a door. Slow, deliberate, easy to deny at first. But eventually you can't unsee it. Can't unknow it. I had heard her laugh and her words, and even though I hadn't reacted, something had taken root inside me that night. Something observant. Something quiet. I became less of a husband and more of a witness. Emma had always been predictable in the best ways. I used to know when she'd get home to the minute, what she'd order at any restaurant, what scent of candle she'd choose without hesitation. Now, I couldn't tell you which version of her was walking through the door each night. First, it was small things. She started coming home later than usual. Once or twice, sure, I chalked it up to overtime. But then it became consistent. Always some vague explanation. Meetings running long, last-minute dinners with coworkers, a late gym session. The gym thing bothered me most. Emma hated gyms. She used to call them sweat traps for the insecure. Yet suddenly she had a sleek new duffel bag, designer sneakers, and a monthly membership at a boutique fitness club downtown. I didn't question it. I just noted it, added it to the ledger in my mind. She used to call me during her lunch breaks. Tell me about her day, some office gossip, ask if I'd thought about that trip to Colorado we once dreamed of. That stopped too. Texts became mechanical. A thumbs up, a single word reply, or worse, silence until 7 p.m. Once, I made the mistake of asking if everything was okay. She blinked at me like I'd asked whether the sky was still blue. "I'm just busy," she said, then went right back to scrolling. But the distance wasn't just about her words. It was in her touch. Before, even when tired, she'd slide her fingers along my back as she passed, or kiss my shoulder absent-mindedly while brushing her teeth. That faded. What remained felt scripted, like she was playing a part in a commercial, not living in a marriage. So I did what any man terrified of the truth does. I tried harder. I started cooking again. Not just meals, whole presentations. I remembered her favorite pasta with the chili flakes just right. I bought flowers without a reason. I started leaving notes in her bag the way I did when we were first dating. She smiled. She said, "Thanks." But the smile didn't stay in her eyes. I cleaned the entire house one weekend while she was at spin class. I vacuumed, scrubbed the baseboards, even rearranged the spice rack alphabetically. She walked in, looked around, and asked, "Did the cleaners come today?" I said, "No, I did it." She blinked and muttered, "Oh, that was it." I kept thinking if I reminded her of who we used to be, of the simple joy we had in each other, then maybe she'd find her way back. So I bought tickets to an art exhibit she had once raved about. She used to love oil portraits, said they felt like memories trapped in paint. I didn't even tell her about the surprise until the day of. She looked at the tickets and then hesitated. Said her office was having a late call with headquarters. Sorry, babe. But 3 days later, when I was scrolling social media while she was in the shower, I saw something. A photo. One of her colleagues, Melinda, had posted a story. Just a quick clip. Music, clinking glasses, a flash of wine and laughter. And there, blurry in the background, was Emma. Wearing the blouse she said she spilled wine on 2 weeks ago and had tossed. She was at a restaurant I didn't recognize, next to someone I didn't know. No video lasts more than a few seconds, but that one played in my mind all night. I didn't confront her, not yet, but something solidified inside me. She had lied, and not just about a blouse, not just about a meeting. She had lied about where she was, and who she was with, while I was home roasting vegetables she'd never eat and cleaning rooms she didn't enter anymore. After that night, I changed, not outwardly, not in any way she would notice. I still kissed her cheek when she left. I still asked how her day was. But inside, I stopped hoping for answers. I started looking for patterns. She changed her password on her phone. Again. She said it was a new company policy. But I caught her once, typing it in too quickly for it to be anything work-related. And she was more protective of it than ever. Once, when I reached for it to hand it to her off the coffee table, she practically lunged for it. We stopped having real conversations. Our life became logistics, groceries, bills, dentist appointments. She started saying things like, "I'll be late," instead of, "Don't wait up." And I knew that was her way of checking out, quietly, safely, without having to confront herself. So I did something that surprised even me. I started writing. Every night after she went to bed, I sat on the living room couch with a leather-bound journal I bought from a used bookstore. I didn't write poetry or vent. I just described things. The dinner, her expressions, her texts, the way she lingered in the mirror before leaving. I wasn't writing for revenge or proof. I wasn't preparing for a confrontation. I was trying to understand. Because the truth is, when someone you love starts slipping away, you don't panic at first. You catalog. You build timelines and theories. You measure the distance by how much space there is between 2 sentences, 2 touches, 2 nights in the same bed. I told myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was just stressed and this was a phase. But I knew better. I knew the way she checked herself in the mirror before heading to yoga. I knew the way she smiled at her phone and then said, "Just work." I knew the tone of her voice when she was speaking to someone she wanted to impress. And I hadn't heard that tone with me in a long, long time. Some nights, I sat outside on our back porch after midnight, sipping bourbon and staring at the stars, wondering how we got here. We used to talk about constellations. Now she didn't even look up. The woman I had married was still here. Same voice, same walk, same scent. But she was also a knot. She was drifting into a version of herself I didn't recognize. And I didn't know if she even noticed. Or worse, maybe she did. I've read stories where the moment of discovery comes like lightning. Sudden, explosive, undeniable. A lipstick mark, found earring, a suspicious hotel bill. But the truth is, most real discoveries come quiet. Not with thunder, but with a single vibration on a nightstand before dawn. It was a Thursday, still dark. I'd woken earlier than usual for no particular reason. My eyes adjusted to the thin streak of moonlight slipping through the blinds. Emma was curled away from me, her back bare where the blanket had slipped down. Her breathing was soft, steady. I lay still, thinking maybe I could drift off again. Then her phone lit up, just a faint glow across the room, illuminating the nightstand like a candle. It buzzed once, then again, a soft, pulsing urgency. Emma didn't stir. I know I shouldn't have. I know all the rules about trust and privacy and boundaries. But sometimes silence gives you permission. And this silence was different. It was the kind that held its breath. I slid out of bed quietly, padded across the room barefoot. The screen was still glowing. The message preview was visible, just enough for my stomach to turn. From M. Corporate PR. Message: I can't forget that night. Can we meet again? My hand went cold against the phone. I didn't open it. I didn't scroll or swipe. I just read that line again and again, like it was etched in fire across my brain. I can't forget that night. Can we meet again? I placed the phone back down gently, exactly where it was. I stared at it for a few seconds, not because I wanted more answers, but because I already had all I needed. It wasn't speculation anymore, not just feelings or suspicions. It was real, tangible, right there in black and white. I went downstairs and started the coffee. The sound of the grinder seemed too loud in the stillness. My hands were shaking, but I kept moving. 2 cups. Her favorite mug. The one with the chipped lip she always refused to throw out. I made it just how she liked it. Even added that cinnamon she only liked in the fall. She came downstairs 20 minutes later, wrapped in her robe, hair still wet from a shower. She smiled. She actually smiled at me, like we were just Josh and Emma again. I handed her the mug and said, "Figured you'd want it early today." She looked surprised, grateful even, kissed my cheek, then sipped. "Perfect," she murmured. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Something inside me had cracked. No, not cracked. Snapped. But not in rage. Not in pain. In clarity. I had always imagined that if I ever discovered something like this, I'd shout, demand answers, demand justice. But all I felt was stillness. Like everything around me had paused. And the only sound was the scribbling in my head. That night, I wrote more than I had in months. Not just facts or moments. I wrote feelings, raw, unedited, exposed. I filled 5 pages without stopping. It wasn't a confession or a monologue. It was an act of survival. I needed to translate what I felt into words because otherwise, I was afraid it would eat me alive from the inside. I didn't tell her I knew. I didn't hint at it. I didn't ask who M was. I didn't need to. The truth was its own answer, a complete sentence. Over the next few days, I became someone else. Someone quieter, more observant. I didn't pull away physically, but I stopped engaging emotionally. I watched her closer than ever, not in paranoia, but in a kind of mourning. She still left the house early. Still dressed like she was auditioning for something glamorous and secret. Still said she had meetings. But now I didn't pretend anymore. I started going for long walks at night. Past the bookstore, through the park, sometimes just around our block in slow, looping circles. I listened to old songs we used to dance to and realized I couldn't remember the last time we touched without obligation. One evening, while cleaning the living room, I found a business card wedged beneath the couch. It was glossy, minimalist. No name, just an embossed logo and a single word, Momentum. I looked it up. It wasn't a consulting firm. Not exactly. It was a boutique creative agency specializing in brand and asterisk Macy campaigns. Mostly tech startups, but also private ventures. Emma had mentioned consulting for an off-site brand strategy a few weeks ago. She'd called it boring. Now I knew it had another name. Momentum. The website had a staff page. I clicked through the faces, scanning each one like a detective in a bad film. And then I saw him. Marcus. Director of Public Relations. Tall. Suited. Polished. A smile that suggested he'd never had to chase anything in his life. I stared at the photo too long. Closed the tab. Reopened it. Studied his features like they held some secret code I had to crack. There was no mention of Emma anywhere. No proof she worked with him. But I didn't need a paper trail to know. Some truths land without receipts. After that, I became meticulous with my notebook. Not just writing, but documenting. Her excuses. Her changes in schedule. The differences in her scent, new perfume, sometimes cologne that wasn't mine. I started noting down the foods she stopped eating and the ones she started bringing home. There was a shift in everything. Like she was becoming a new person. And didn't think I'd notice. But I noticed. One night, while brushing her hair, she asked me if I'd considered switching jobs. "You seem restless," she said. I just nodded. She was trying to redirect. To throw out little anchors, hoping I'd grab hold. But I couldn't anymore. I had drifted too far from who we were. Or maybe I was finally drifting toward who I actually was beneath all the roles I'd taken on. I started journaling earlier. Instead of after midnight, I'd do it at twilight while she was still gone. I wrote about what it felt like to love someone who didn't see you anymore. What it meant to wake up every morning next to a mystery and still make her coffee out of habit. What it felt like to hand her phone, knowing what it contained, and still say, "Have a good day." I wasn't waiting for a confrontation anymore. I was preparing for something quieter. Something I didn't have a name for yet. All I knew was that I had crossed a line within myself. A point of no return. There was no going back to the man who didn't know. No erasing the moment her phone lit up in the dark and told me everything. And in some twisted way I was grateful. Because now, at least, I wasn't living in the shadows of maybe. Now I had light. It hurt, but it was real. There's a peculiar numbness that sets in when you live with a truth you can't say aloud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It just hovers just beneath the skin, like a pulse you can't quiet. I carried that silence for weeks. A heavy, invisible weight pressing on every word I didn't say. But I didn't break. I didn't confront. I waited. Then came the corporate party. Emma was never one for work events, but this one she actually seemed excited about. She spent hours getting ready, trying on dresses, texting someone about which earrings to wear. She asked me twice if the navy looked better than the Berg *NDY. I gave vague answers and watched her carefully, like a stranger studying someone he used to know. I wore the gray suit she once said made me look presidential. I didn't like how it fit anymore. It hung awkwardly, like the version of myself she used to admire had already slipped out of it. The event was held at a rooftop bar downtown, one of those places with glass railings and ambient jazz playing too soft to enjoy. The skyline glittered like a lie someone wanted you to believe. We walked in together, her arm looped through mine. Anyone watching would have thought we were happy. We were the illusion of a couple, polished and effortless. But inside I was scanning for one face. Marcus. And then I saw him. He stood near the bar, sipping something golden. Crisp suit. Confident posture. He laughed too loudly at a joke no one else found funny. Emma tensed slightly when she saw him, just enough for me to notice. She didn't point him out. She didn't need to. Her eyes did it for her. I didn't confront. I mingled, smiled when expected, made small talk about IPOs and corporate trends with people I didn't care to remember. But every now and then, I caught her watching him from across the room. Not often, not blatantly, just enough. Later that night, as I stood by a table near the balcony, drink in hand, she approached me. She looked beautiful, undeniably so, but there was something off in her eyes, something brittle behind the mascara. She slipped her hand onto my shoulder, leaned in close, and whispered, "Are you still mine?" For a second I froze, not because of the question, but because she actually dared to ask it. I turned my head slightly toward her and said, quiet, sharp, "Not after what you did." Her hand dropped. She didn't say a word, just stared at me like I'd struck her. And maybe, in a way, I had. We didn't speak for the rest of the event. The car ride home was silent, except for the low hum of the tires against the road. I kept my eyes forward. My grip on the wheel was steady. Emma stared out the passenger window, her fingers twisting a ring she hadn't worn in years. When we pulled into the driveway, she didn't move. Just sat there, like she couldn't bring herself to go inside. I unlocked the door and walked in without her. 10 minutes later, she joined me in the kitchen. The party makeup was gone. She had washed her face and put on an old hoodie, the one she used to steal from me when we first started dating. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of something finally caught up with her. I sat at the table, sipping water. She stood across from me, arms crossed, waiting. She said nothing, so I did. "I'd kiss you," I said, "but I don't want to taste him." The words didn't shake. They didn't come out like venom. They came out like fact. She stared at me for a long time, then finally asked, "How long have you known?" I didn't answer, because it didn't matter. She nodded slowly, as if confirming something for herself, as if this was the moment she had both feared and expected. Then she said the strangest thing, You weren't supposed to find out like this. I wanted to laugh, as if there's ever a right way to discover betrayal. But I stayed quiet. She left the room. I sat there another 20 minutes, listening to the house around me. The creak of pipes, the settling of walls, the ghost of who we had once been still haunting the floorboards. Later that night, she came to bed. She didn't try to touch me. She didn't cry. She just lay beside me, her back to mine, her breathing steady and distant. I didn't move, and I realized something cruel but true. The woman next to me wasn't Emma anymore. Not really. She looked like her. She spoke like her. But something inside had changed. She had become a stranger wearing my wife's face. In the days that followed, we didn't talk about it. Not directly. The topic hung in the air like smoke. Unavoidable but unspoken. I didn't demand names or timelines. I didn't rage or pack a bag. I just moved through the house like a man adjusting to a new climate. Quiet, alert, altered. Emma made coffee one morning. Brought me a cup. I said thank you. She asked if I wanted eggs. I said no. We moved through the scene like actors who knew their lines but had forgotten the story. I kept writing in my notebook. The words came faster now. There was no need to question anymore. No need to theorize. I had the truth. And the truth had set something in me free, but not in the way people mean when they say that. It didn't give me peace. It gave me clarity. And clarity is a lonely thing. But it's honest. After that night, our home became a quiet stage for two people who had already said everything but hadn't decided when to leave. We didn't shout. We didn't fight. There were no dramatic exits. No broken plates or thrown keys. Just silence. A silence that didn't ask for permission. That sat down beside us like an old friend who had grown too comfortable. Emma still woke up before me most days. But now she no longer kissed my forehead before slipping out of bed. The scent of her lotion still lingered in the hallway, but it no longer made me pause. She started setting her mug closer to the sink instead of placing it next to mine. Little things. Thoughtless things. But they added up. I had stopped waiting. I no longer lingered at the window when she was out. I no longer checked her side of the bed in the morning. I didn't ask where she was going or when she'd return. I didn't pretend to be asleep when she came home late. I didn't keep dinner warm. Instead, I learned to make just enough for one. In the evenings, I played old blues records and lit a candle at the table. Not out of romance. Not for her. For me. To remember what it felt like to enjoy my own company without apology. I'd eat slowly, read while I chewed, and occasionally scribble thoughts in the notebook I kept on the counter. It had become my most honest companion. One morning, she left a croissant on the table. No note, just the pastry on a napkin. My favorite kind, almond with the flaky ends. I looked at it, then at the closed door behind her. I didn't touch it. I wasn't punishing her. I just no longer felt hungry for things I used to crave. She tried again 2 days later. This time, she brought home the bourbon I liked. Set it in the cabinet with a small smile. I nodded. Said thanks. Didn't open it. She was trying to reclaim familiarity. I could see that. Bringing back objects and rituals, like tokens from a happier time. But what she didn't understand was that once trust breaks, even the ordinary becomes suspicious. A kind gesture doesn't soothe, it startles. You question what it's meant to erase. The house felt different. Not empty. Not hostile. Just misaligned. Like it belonged to two people with separate soundtracks playing in different rooms. I moved through the space like a guest staying a little too long. And she tiptoed like someone trying not to wake something fragile. She began talking more, suddenly, too much. She asked if I wanted to go on a weekend trip. Said we could drive to the coast, get some air. I told her I had things to do. I didn't lie. I just didn't elaborate. Truth had become my new boundary, and I guarded it carefully. Some nights, she hovered near the doorway while I wrote. Not interrupting, just standing there, watching me with the kind of eyes people reserve for portraits in museums. Recognition without ownership. I never invited her in. Never shut the book either. That notebook wasn't a secret, but she knew it wasn't hers. She tried cooking dinner once. Candlelight, slow jazz, That old blue tablecloth from our 3rd anniversary. I sat, ate, said the meal was good. She looked relieved. But we didn't speak beyond that. I could feel her trying to fill the silence with smiles, with stories from work, with careful laughter. I just listened, nodded. It was like watching someone play a character they no longer believed in. That night, I slept on the couch. I didn't say why. She didn't ask. The next morning, she folded the blanket and set a pillow on the armrest, as if she understood something without needing it spoken. And maybe she did. I started walking more, by the river, through the old trails near the park, around neighborhoods we never lived in. I liked hearing leaves crunch beneath my feet, liked feeling the chill seep into my bones. It reminded me I was still here, still real. When I came back, I'd shower, make tea, and write. Always write. I no longer checked her phone. I no longer looked for clues. I didn't need them. I wasn't investigating anymore. I was documenting my exit, not from the house, but from the space we used to share, from the role I had once played without question. Emma, to her credit, didn't beg. She didn't cry. She didn't explode. She was too composed for that, too proud. But I noticed her quiet cracks. The way she stared at old photos on the fridge for too long. The way she hesitated before leaving for work. Once, I found her in the laundry room, sitting on the floor with a sweater in her hands. The one I wore on our first road trip. She didn't see me. I didn't say anything. We lived like that for weeks. Not roommates, not lovers, not even friends. Just echoes passing through the same rooms, pretending not to collide. One night, she knocked on my door. Yes, my door. I had started sleeping in the guest room. I hadn't announced it. I had just moved my things quietly. The room was smaller, colder, less familiar. But it was mine, a space untouched by pretense. She stood in the doorway for a moment, barefoot, hair down, no makeup. The version of her I remembered most vividly, the version from our early days before careers and expectations. She didn't sit. She didn't speak right away. Then she said, softly, "You don't even look at me anymore." I met her eyes. "I used to," I replied. She nodded like she deserved that. "I keep thinking I can fix it," she whispered. "But I don't know how." "You can't fix what you stopped valuing," I said. "You can only mourn it." We stood there for a long moment. She didn't reach out. I didn't step forward. Eventually, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I believed her. But I also knew, apologies aren't time machines. That night, I fell asleep more easily than I had in weeks. The slow goodbye doesn't look like the movies. It's not a single conversation or a storm of accusations. It's the space that forms between two people when one of them stops trying and the other realizes too late what that silence means. We didn't talk about divorce. We didn't even talk about separation. There was no plan, no papers. Just the quiet truth unraveling the fabric we had wrapped around ourselves for years. The goodbye had already begged *N. We were just taking turns pretending it hadn't. 2 weeks after that night in the doorway, she knocked again. This time, she didn't stand. She sat on the floor, legs crossed, shoulders slumped. I stayed on the bed, notebook open, pen still in hand. She didn't cry, didn't reach, just said, "I've become someone I never wanted to be." Her voice was a ghost of itself. Then, without prompting, she added, "I thought you were stuck while I was moving forward. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was just running. I didn't even know from what." I closed the notebook. Not angry, just still. I said, "I'm not leaving, but I'm not staying in this version of us either." She nodded. That was the first time she didn't ask for a second chance. She didn't ask what I needed or how to fix it. We didn't fall into each other's arms. We didn't try to make something broken feel whole. That night, we slept in separate rooms again. Only now it felt like a decision, not avoidance. We began to live like neighbors, sharing space but not int *Macy. Polite, careful, distant. I stopped writing about her and started writing about myself. My own fears, dreams, memories before us. I started to rediscover who I was before the silence crept in. A month later, she left a brochure on the table. A creative retreat in Oregon. 1 month. Remote. Solitary. I think I need to go, she said. I nodded. I helped her pack. Not like a partner sending off a loved one. Like a man watching another soul finally choose to stop pretending. At the car, she turned and said, I loved you, even when I forgot how to show it. I looked at her, really looked, then replied, I believe you, but now I love myself too. She smiled, a tired, honest smile. The kind you give when there's nothing left to argue. The house didn't feel empty after she left. It felt open. I cleaned out the guest room, turned it into a small studio, started painting again badly but freely. I visited art galleries, took long train rides to nowhere, and I enrolled in a night class creative writing. One rainy evening at a cafe near the station, I ran into Christine, Emma's former coworker. She sat with me. We didn't talk about Emma much, just about books, art, and second lives. Before she left, she said, You were her center, but she stopped looking. It hurt too much. Her words didn't sting. They released something. That night, I came home, poured a glass of wine, opened the windows, and whispered into the quiet, I'm not angry anymore, but that doesn't mean we're together again. Emma never replied, but somewhere I think she heard. Endings don't always sound like slammed doors. Sometimes they're just the hush of a soft suitcase zipper, the creak of steps in the hallway, the stillness of a morning you wake up alone and don't feel broken, just ready, just new.